I was sitting in that same creaky office chair I'd been assigned on my first day, slightly off balance, with a mystery stain on the armrest no one ever bothered to clean. 6 years later, and somehow it was still there. Like me, Elliot slid a folder across the desk. Neat, unassuming, and completely predictable. His face wore that familiar expression, half corporate sympathy, half smug restraint. I didn't even have to open it to know what it said. Promotion denied. Again. 12 times. 12 times I'd thrown everything I had into this company. 12 times I'd been told I was close or next in line. And 12 times someone else had walked away with the title I had earned. This time, it went to Kirsten, a bright, eager hire who had been at Paragon Strategic for exactly 8 months. She was talented. Sure, but not more than me. Not better. Just newer. Shania. She went to the same business school as our CEO, which, as it turns out, was qualification enough. Elliot leaned forward like we were co-conspirators instead of what we actually were. My boss and my professional gatekeeper. The thing is, Abigail, he said in that soothing HR voice he used when handing out bad news. Q4 isn't ideal for leadership transitions, but I've got your name at the top of the list for spring. Spring. I almost laughed then, but I didn't. I nodded instead, playing my role. The agreeable, hard-working team player. I pretended like I hadn't heard that exact line before, like I hadn't spent 6 years building systems from scratch, saving high-risk tech clients, and doing the invisible work no one else wanted to do. I smiled. I thanked him. I stood up. I took the folder. And then, I did something I didn't expect. I laughed. Not a nervous chuckle. Not a professional keep it together laugh. I laughed, the kind of laugh that makes people uncomfortable, the kind that tells the room, something in me has finally snapped. Elliot blinked, caught off guard. His fake empathy wavered. Something funny, he asked. Yeah, I said, still laughing. Me. I'm the joke. For believing you. 12 times. And just like that, I knew. I was done performing. That laugh, it wasn't insanity. It was clarity. It was the sound of a woman realizing she'd been playing a rigged game by rules that never applied to her in the first place. And it was the first sound of freedom. You see, I used to believe that if I just worked harder, kept my head down, earned it the right way, they'd eventually see my value. But that laugh was my body saying what my mind hadn't fully admitted yet. They weren't ever going to see me. Because they never wanted to. I left Elliot's office and walked back to my desk. Kirsten was there. Smiling. Holding her new business cards like they were golden tickets. Senior consultant gleamed in embossed navy lettering. The same title I'd been quietly chasing since 2019. I smiled at her. Politely. But inside, I felt something shift. Something let go. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was the quiet, deliberate unhooking of my worth from their approval. And that's where it started. Not a dramatic confrontation. Not an explosive resignation. Just one clear, calculated decision. This was the last time I'd let them decide my value, and while they celebrated their shiny new favorite, I began building something they never saw coming. Not because I was petty, but because I was finally done being polite about my potential. I didn't know it then. But that laugh, it wasn't the breaking point. It was the turning point. And I was just getting started. People like to believe that hard work pays off. That if you show up, deliver results, and do more than what's asked of you, someone will eventually reward you, recognize you, promote you. I used to believe that, too. At Paragon Strategic, I was the person who said yes when everyone else said that's not my job. I automated half of our internal reporting systems before we even had a dedicated tech ops team. I saved a 7-figure contract with a global cybersecurity firm when our lead consultant ghosted in the middle of implementation. I worked 60-hour weeks without complaint. Because I genuinely cared. And for years, they told me I was invaluable. But apparently, not promotable. Every time I asked what I needed to do to move up, they gave me a new target, a new box to check. You need more client-facing experience. Elliot once said. So I joined external strategy calls. Then, we need to see more leadership. So I led 2 cross-functional teams through their most chaotic quarters to date. Next, we'd like to see stronger technical credentials. So I got certified in 3 different enterprise systems within 8 months. Each time, I delivered. And each time, the bar moved just a little further out of reach. At first, I thought I was just missing something intangible. Some X factor I couldn't name. Maybe I wasn't charismatic enough in meetings. Maybe I wasn't political enough. Maybe I didn't smile enough. Or maybe I smiled too much. But then I started paying closer attention. Brody, who missed half his deadlines and openly admitted he hated client work. He got promoted after a company golf retreat with Elliot. Vivian, who relied on me to build her dashboards and explain KPIs during presentations, promoted after becoming best friends with the director of consulting. And now Kirsten, who had barely finished onboarding but just so happened to attend the same business school as our CEO senior consultant in under a year. That was when the delusion started to unravel. There was no formula, no amount of effort, loyalty, or results would ever override what this place truly valued: familiarity over performance, relationships over results, and above all, comfort over competence. And I wasn't comfortable. I asked too many questions. I made too much happen without needing to be told. I was inconvenient in all the ways that didn't flatter someone else's ego. They didn't want to promote me. They wanted to keep me exactly where I was. Useful but invisible. I used to lie awake at night wondering what was wrong with me. Wondering why I kept being overlooked while others were elevated for doing half as much. But that morning, watching Kirsten show off her title to anyone who glanced her way, it hit me. There's nothing wrong with me. The problem wasn't my performance. It was the premise. I had been trying to play a game I thought was based on merit. But it wasn't a game. It was a closed circle. And I was never part of it. I wasn't supposed to win. And once I finally understood that, I stopped playing by their rules. Because there's only so long you can keep chasing a finish line that moves every time you get close. Only so long you can keep proving yourself to people who've already decided not to see you. And somewhere in that realization, between the exhaustion and the clarity, something new began to grow. Not resentment. Not bitterness. Strategy. And for the first time, it wasn't about earning a seat at their table. It was about building my own. It happened at 2:17 a.m. On a Tuesday. I was sitting on the cold tile of my bathroom floor, still in my work clothes. Makeup smudged from the tears I hadn't meant to cry. The kind of crying that hits you in waves. Sealant at first, then heaving and unpretty. The kind where you feel like you're breaking open from the inside out. No music. No lights, just the soft hum of my ceiling fan and the deep ache of a woman who had finally run out of justifications. I had given 6 years of my life to Paragon Strategic. Of energy. Of weekends. Of missed birthdays and canceled vacations. All because I believed, deep down, that if I kept showing up, kept delivering, kept saying yes, while others said, not my problem, someone would finally see me. But the truth was so much harder to swallow. They had seen me. They just didn't value what they saw. I called my sister, Renee. She was the only person I could talk to in that state. Someone who knew when to push and when to just sit with me in the dark. Even from across the country. She answered on the second ring. Groggy but awake in that instinctive, older sibling kind of way. "Abby, what's wrong?" And I broke. I spilled it all. The promotions. The politics. The resentment that had been quietly curdling under the surface for years. I told her how tired I was. Bone-deep tired. How I didn't even recognize myself anymore. How I kept thinking maybe if I just tried harder. She let me finish. Then said something so simple. So painfully accurate. That it stopped me cold. "I'm not saying quit your job," she said gently. "I'm saying quit giving your best to people who don't value it." That one sentence hit harder than any rejection email ever had. I sat there for a long time after we hung up, letting those words echo in the silence. Quit giving my best, not out of spite, not to punish them, but to reclaim it, for me, because somewhere along the way, I'd started believing their indifference was a reflection of my worth, that if I just proved myself enough, I'd finally be let in. But Renee was right. I didn't need to leave Paragon to take back my power. I just needed to stop performing for an audience that never planned to clap. And that's when the idea came. What if I didn't leave in a blaze of fury? What if I didn't storm out or make a scene? What if I stayed strategically? What if I used the next 6 months to position myself? Not for another promotion, but for freedom. No more trying to be liked. No more over-delivering for people who'd already made up their minds about me. No more free emotional labor. Fixing what others broke. Making sure egos stayed intact. This wouldn't be a tantrum. This would be an exit strategy. One that was calm. Precise. Measured. I grabbed a notepad from under my sink, the one I usually used for grocery lists, and scribbled at the top in bold letters, 6-month plan, exit with leverage. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. Not hope. Not yet. Control. And that would be enough to start. If rage is loud, strategy is silent. I didn't quit the next day. I didn't post a vague LinkedIn status or start cleaning out my desk. I did the exact opposite. I showed up early. Smiled in meetings. Answered emails like nothing had changed. But everything had. The difference, I was no longer working for them. I was working through them. Quietly. Deliberately. And with a clarity that made me dangerous in the best possible way. Phase 1, make myself irreplaceable. It started with the fires no one else wanted to put out. I raised my hand for the messiest accounts, clients teetering on the edge. Implementation plans held together with duct tape. I became the go-to for complex integration issues. Architecture misalignement. And technical translation between developers and C-suite clients. Not because I wanted the praise, but because I needed the leverage. Within 3 weeks, our biggest client, Skycore Technologies, stopped going through Paragon's support line. They came directly to me. "Abigail, we'd rather wait until you're available." That sentence became my unofficial tagline. I documented everything. Every workaround I created. Every gap I filled. I built a digital knowledge base. Not on their servers, but on mine. Password protected. Categorized. Archived. Because when you are the infrastructure, you should know exactly what happens if you walk away. Phase 2, build the escape hatch. While I was solving their chaos by day, I was building my future at night. I reconnected with former colleagues, people who'd moved on to better firms. Startups. Even VC-backed ventures. I didn't ask for a job. I asked about pain points. What was missing? What they wished they had. What they'd pay for someone else to handle. Every answer went into my notebook. I built a portfolio. Not just of what I'd done, but how I did it. And the measurable impact it had. Not one bullet point of fluff. Just proof. Then I registered an LLC. A placeholder name. Clarity Partners. No social media. No announcement. Just paperwork. Legal foundation. Clean and quiet. I opened a business account. transferred a portion of every paycheck into it. It wasn't much, but enough to give me 6 months of breathing room when the time came. Because when you walk away, you don't want to be desperate. You want to be ready. Phase 3, emotional detachment. The final piece wasn't logistical. It was psychological. I stopped caring if my name was mentioned in meetings. I stopped waiting for Elliot to give me credit for the strategies he recycled from our 11S. I no longer cared that I wasn't invited to leadership offsites or added to high-potential cohorts. I saw it for what it was, a closed system built to reinforce itself. So I stopped trying to enter it. Paragon became a means to an end. A temporary client I was still under contract with. Not a community I needed to belong to. The moment that clicked, I felt free in a way I never had inside those glass walls. And the more detached I became, the more power I gained. I wasn't distracted by their politics. I wasn't crushed by their silence. I was focused. Laser-focused. On one thing, the exit. Not just an exit from a company. An exit from needing anyone's permission to own my brilliance. And trust me, when that kind of woman walks into a room, people feel it. They just don't know yet what she's planning. 6 months to the day after I laughed in Elliot's office. The day that marked rejection number 12. I walked back into that same room. Only this time, I wasn't hoping to be seen. I was there to leave. On my own terms. With no room for negotiation. It was early. The office was still quiet. Elliot was finishing his second cup of coffee. Looking relaxed. Possibly even smug. He didn't look up right away. Until I placed a crisp white envelope in the center of his desk. His smile froze. "What's this?" My resignation. He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "You're leaving now, 2 weeks' notice. Effective immediately." He blinked. Processing. "Abigail. Let's talk about this. If this is about the last promotion cycle, spring is coming up and..." "No," I said. Calm and firm. "This isn't a negotiation." That was the moment the panic started. Not the loud kind. The quiet. Shifting in your chair kind. The kind where someone suddenly realizes they're not holding the cards anymore. I saw it in his eyes. The dawning awareness that I wasn't bluffing. That this wasn't some emotional flinch. That I had planned this. Carefully. Silently. Completely. "I don't think you understand what's at stake," he said, leaning forward. "You're in the middle of the SkyCore integration, and the RevTech team is depending on you." I smiled. "I know. Because that was the point." The next 48 hours were chaos. They called an emergency leadership meeting. I wasn't invited. Of course. But I didn't need to be. Word spread quickly. The systems I'd quietly built. The dashboards. The automation flows. The custom reporting templates. Began failing without me there to troubleshoot. Clients began asking questions. Specifically, they began asking where I was. "We need Abigail on this. We're not comfortable continuing without her involvement." The most poetic part, the very same people who had once told me I wasn't quite ready for leadership were now begging me to train someone. Anyone. Before I left. By the end of the week, they made their first offer. Elliot called me back into his office. This time with Vernon, the CEO. Seated beside him. Expression tight. "We've been discussing your value to the company," Vernon began. Like it was some newfound revelation. "We'd like to offer you the senior consultant title, effective immediately, with a 15% raise." I didn't even blink. "I appreciate the offer," I said. "But I've already made other arrangements." They looked stunned. Like the idea that I might have options outside their little bubble had never occurred to them. "We can go higher," Vernon added quickly. "Say 20%, and we'll fast-track you for senior manager in Q2. I shook my head. This was never about the title. Or the money. which wasn't entirely true. The money had always been insultingly low. But for me, it was about something deeper. About not spending another day in a place that had shown me 12 separate times that I wasn't worth investing in. That weekend, I got a Slack message from HR. Exit interview Monday, it asked. As if any of this could be reduced to bullet points and polite phrasing. By my second week of notice, things were unraveling fast. Systems were breaking. Clients were restless. My so-called replacement didn't exist. And suddenly, leadership started throwing out titles like candy on Halloween. Senior manager. Director level. Name your price. And still, I said no. Until finally, Elliot asked, exhausted and frustrated, "Why are you doing this?" I didn't hesitate. "You had 6 years to make it right," I said, locking eyes with him. "I'm done." And for the first time in all the years I'd known him, Elliot had nothing to say. Just silence. Because he finally understood. They weren't losing an employee. They were losing the foundation they didn't realize they were standing on. On a quiet Monday morning, exactly 1 week after I walked out of Paragon for the last time, I walked into a different office. Mine. No glass walls. No passive-aggressive energy. Just clean white walls. A desk, I picked myself. And a simple brass nameplate that read Clarity Partners founder and principal Abigail Jameson. It was surreal. Not because I didn't think I could do it, but because for so long, I had convinced myself I needed their permission to try. I didn't make a grand announcement. No press release. No viral LinkedIn post with hashtags and humblebrags. I reached out, personally, quietly, to the people who mattered. Namely, TechNest and Skycore. These were 2 of Paragon's biggest accounts. I'd spent years nurturing those relationships. I knew their systems better than they did. I knew their pain points, their roadmaps, their internal politics, and more importantly, they knew me. So when I emailed both CIOs and said I'd launched my own consultancy, their responses were swift and telling. "How soon can you start?" It wasn't a poach. I wasn't selling. I was simply providing an alternative, a better one. Within 2 weeks, both clients began offboarding from Paragon and transitioning to Clarity Partners. Not just the projects I'd personally led, but their entire portfolios. It was like watching a tide shift. Slow at first. Then, undeniable. Naturally. Vernon, the CEO, didn't take it well. One afternoon, I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. And when I played it back, I heard his voice, strained and furious. "Abigail, this is Vernon. We need to talk. What you're doing violates your non-compete. We'll pursue legal action if this doesn't stop." I played it again. Not because I was worried, but because I enjoyed how rattled he sounded. Then, calmly, I emailed him back. "Dear Vernon, I appreciate your concern, but you may want to double-check your records. I never signed a non-compete agreement during my 6 years at Paragon. Please let me know if you locate one. I'd be happy to review it with my attorney. Warm regards." "Abigail." He didn't reply. Because he knew I was right. In all the chaos, in all their entitlement, they'd never bothered to protect themselves. They assumed I'd never leave, let alone become competition. That oversight, it was now costing them millions. Word spread. Within 3 months, I had signed 5 clients, 3 from Paragon and 2 new ones from referrals. Clarity Partners was no longer just a shell LLC. It was a living, breathing operation. I hired a junior analyst, then a project manager, then a systems architect I used to mentor back at Paragon, and for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't just earning what I deserved. I was keeping it. Triple the income, half the hours, zero politics, I set boundaries, charged what I was worth, and built systems the right way, from the ground up, without shortcuts, without band-aid fixes, and without pretending broken processes were fine just to protect someone's ego. And meanwhile, Paragon was bleeding. They had lost 2 of their most profitable tech clients, several mid-tier accounts, and were rapidly losing their grip on internal morale. Staff turnover spiked, deadlines slipped, client confidence evaporated. But I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Because my success wasn't about their failure. It was about proving, to them and to myself, that the value I brought had never needed their stamp of approval. I had just forgotten that for a while. But now I remembered. And I wasn't going back. The message came through LinkedIn of all places. Simple. Unassuming. Hi, Abigail. Any chance you'd be open to grabbing coffee sometime? I'd really like to talk. It was from Kirsten. Yes. That Kirsten. The one who had been handed the senior consultant title. The 12th rejection that broke the illusion and started it all. I stared at the screen for a long moment, thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me expected it to be a trap, some awkward olive branch from Paragon. Maybe even a request to talk sense into the clients I'd rightfully earned. But curiosity won out. We met the next afternoon at a quiet cafe tucked into the corner of the financial district. She arrived looking different. Not polished and energetic like before. She looked tired, like someone who had been fighting a silent battle and losing. She stirred her latte twice before speaking. I'm miserable, she said finally. Everything is falling apart. No one knows what they're doing. The Skycore account is imploding. And Elliot. He's blaming everyone but himself. I listened. Quietly. As she unraveled. She told me how the systems I'd built had either broken down or been buried under sloppy replacements. How the leadership team was in constant triage mode. How Vernon had banned anyone from saying my name in meetings. But still compared current outcomes to when I was there. They act like you're the villain, she whispered. But also like they can't function without you. There was something deeply satisfying about hearing that. Not because I wanted her to suffer. I didn't. But because it confirmed something I already knew. They had built their house on my backbone. And when I walked away, the foundation cracked. She looked up. Eyes tired but sincere. I want to work for you. He blinked, not out of shock, but out of the strange, full-circle symmetry of it all. This was the woman who had once been the symbol of everything I thought I couldn't overcome. And now she was asking to join me. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she saw something better. I paused, studying her face, looking for the catch. Was she here to collect intel to report back? But all I saw was honesty, exhaustion, and something else, something I recognized immediately, that desperate hunger to finally be valued for what you actually bring to the table. Send me your resume, I said. Let's talk. 2 weeks later. Kirsten officially joined Clarity Partners as our new director of client services. And she was brilliant. Once she was out of Paragon's toxic shadow, she came alive. Strategic. Sharp. Empathetic. Clients adored her. Teams trusted her. And more importantly, she thrived in an environment that didn't ask her to shrink to fit. Not long after, I brought on Tanya, a data analyst I had worked with years ago. Bright. Innovative. And consistently ignored by middle management for not being polished enough. Then came Ren. Yes. Vernon's former assistant, who reached out after Paragon's latest reorg left her buried in admin chaos. She now runs operations for Clarity. Efficient. Unshakable. And finally free to make decisions instead of take orders. The irony isn't lost on me. The very people Paragon underestimated, sidelined, or ignored, They're now the heart of my company. We built something different. Not just in business model, but in ethos. A place where merit is the standard, not a selling point. Where talent doesn't have to scream to be heard. Where your value isn't determined by your proximity to power, but by what you contribute, day in and day out. Poetic justice, maybe, but for me, it's something deeper. It's redemption. Not just for myself, but for everyone who was ever told they were not quite ready by people who were never quite capable. And the best part, we're just getting started. 6 months to the day after Clarity Partners officially opened its doors, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. It was after hours, and I was sitting in my new office. A warm, sunlit space with floor-to-ceiling windows, a thriving monstera in the corner, and my company's name etched on the glass door. I had just finished reviewing a client proposal with Ren, and was about to head home when curiosity got the better of me. "This is Abigail." The voice on the other end was hoarse, strained, and all too familiar. "Abigail, it's Vernon." I didn't say anything at first. I just let the silence settle, as if daring him to fill it with something other than excuses. "We need to talk," he said quickly. "Things at Paragon. They're not good." He didn't have to tell me. I already knew. Word travels fast in consulting circles. I'd heard about the revenue dip, the client churn, the internal reshuffles that felt more like panic than planning. "We've lost 7 clients since you left," he continued. "Quarterly numbers are the worst they've been in 5 years. Still." I said nothing. "Look, Abigail, we want you back. We'll match your current salary. Double it. Even. Director title. Equity. You can choose your projects. Work remotely. Total freedom." There it was. The offer I had fantasized about during those long years of being overlooked, underestimated, and told to wait your turn. And now that it was real, I didn't want it. Not for the money. Not for the title. Not even for the satisfaction of watching them grovel. Because the truth is, I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. Or bitter. Or secretly craving validation. I had simply moved on. "I appreciate the offer," I said calmly. "But I'm not interested." "Please," he said. And for the first time, his voice cracked. "Just come in for a meeting. Name your terms." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting it sink in. All the years I had spent auditioning for their approval, trying to be seen. All the times I had accepted less, worked more, and told myself next quarter would be different. And now the same man who once told me I wasn't quite ready was begging for a second chance. But the real revenge, it wasn't saying no. It was not needing to say yes. "I've moved on," I told him. "And so should you." I hung up the phone. No dramatic ending. No mic drop. Just quiet peace. I turned off the lights, stepped into the hallway, and glanced back one last time, not at the past, but at everything I'd built since walking away from it. Today, Clarity Partners has 17 employees. We've doubled our revenue each year. We work with clients who respect us, build solutions we believe in, and operate from a place of trust, not fear. Kirsten is thriving as Director of Client Services. Tanya runs our analytics division. Ren manages operations like a seasoned pro. Our team meetings are filled with laughter, clarity, and most importantly, mutual respect. Paragon, they're still around. Smaller, weaker, a shadow of what they could have been if they had just known how to listen. But this story, it was never really about them. It was about me. Learning that I didn't need to prove my worth to people who had already decided not to see it. The 12 rejections weren't failures. They were redirections. Every no guided me closer to where I was supposed to be all along. So if you're sitting at a company that doesn't recognize you, if you're wondering how much more you have to give just to be treated like you matter, let me leave you with this. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away.